Welcome to Biota.org Interviews. I'm Tom Barbalet, and today a special podcast. As you listen to these podcasts, you may be looking for other podcasts of a similar light, and I think whilst Artificial Life podcasts are still a relatively fledgling project, I wanted to bring to your attention Gerald de Jong's DarwinAtHome podcast, which is particularly good and covers Gerald's own DarwinAtHome developments, discussions of kind of broader A-life philosophy, and also his interaction with academics, which is the podcast that I'm going to be rebroadcasting in the feed today.
DarwinAtHome invites you into the algorithm.
Episode 8. Hey, I hope you enjoyed last week's episode, which was, of course, just a recording of my presentation at the BNIC conference in Namur in Belgium. You'll remember from podcasts before that I was sort of working up to that presentation, partly as a sort of a deadline that I imposed for myself just to get something done on time. And I sort of coordinated my release of the new intelligent design version with the presentation at the BNIC conference. I had 20 minutes to talk about and show the program. The other demonstrations were actually surprisingly similar to the presentation of papers. People had presentations, slides going from one to the other, and then eventually showed a demo. I just demonstrated the program and talked about it for quite a bit before I did do the demo. And when I see the video back, there are a couple things that I could have improved, definitely. And the interesting thing about the BNIC conference for DarwinAtHome is that, in a way, it's not really the right place to be for this sort of project. Because this conference is an academic conference. These people are getting together to present papers to each other. They're all trying to get the ideas across that they've been working on in the last year, to describe the experiments that they've done and the hypothesis and all the work they've been doing to get the science moving. And in a way, DarwinAtHome is not as much a science project as all that, because the results of DarwinAtHome are not really graphs and formulas and statistics, things like that. I haven't gone that direction. It could be done. In fact, last year when I presented at the BNIC conference, they also very much enjoyed the show. But right after that, I got in contact with a professor who was sort of interested in having me do a PhD on the subject. And I considered it fairly seriously. I spent a while really thinking about what I would write down and what I would do. But on the other hand, when I started thinking about it more and more, it was like it's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take a lot of analysis, a lot of really deep diving down. And basically, I would sort of have to stop the development of the software for a while in order to write about it all. Yeah, put it into a scientific frame where I have a hypothesis and then I do experiments to prove or disprove the hypothesis, because that's science. And the BNIC conference is all about science. DarwinAtHome, however, is not entirely all about science. Part of the charm of the whole program is the visual effect it has on people, and that's not scientific. In fact, this project, if I were to present it at the BNIC in terms of mathematical formulas and results and graphs and the proving or disproving of a hypothesis, it would go over just fine without any visual representation whatsoever. That's complete extra. They like it. Everybody enjoys it. It's nice to look at. I think it's core to the project, for maybe not necessarily scientific reasons, but still core to the project, because part of the idea here is just to get people interested, to get people impressed by what evolution can do. And, people make up a part of the equation. I don't care necessarily to convince these scientists of anything, because they're already convinced. You can tell that from the very first moment when when I started my presentation, almost the first thing I did was ask a question. I said to the people in the audience at the B-Night conference, these are all professors and graduate students, and I asked them, raise your hand if you think that computers can discover things. And I didn't know what people were going to answer. I wasn't sure whether the question was going to be too much of a surprise. But sure enough, they all raised their hands, basically. There was almost nobody who didn't raise their hands. And it was quite immediate. So I thought, okay, this is one way to look at life, and these people look at it this way. And so do I, of course. So I was sort of preaching to the choir. I imagine, at least, that there are lots of people out in the world, all sorts of, more or less intelligent people who are interested in very different domains and whatever, who don't think that computers can discover things. And it's more for that kind of person that I'm doing this project, so that people can really dive in and experience what it's like to see something emerge from nothing. Another thing I've done in the last couple of days, at least, I found a little bit of time again to revamp the website. So I've got now a podcast page to make it easier for people to subscribe. I'm also setting up a sort of an introduction page from myself so that people know what this project's about and where it's going a little bit. And what I've also done in the last week is I've scrounged together a bunch of animations. Some of them were from the original film that I published a little while ago, the big long film, which was almost too long. Most people responded by saying, I couldn't watch the whole thing. And actually, I don't blame them. I look at it too, and I think there's just a bit too much of me talking there. It's a little too monotone. So what I did was I thought, okay, the animations are what it's all about. It's actually about the fluidium. It's about the DarwinAtHome creatures that emerge from the software and about the way they behave. It's not necessarily about my history or anything like that. Most people just want a quick view of what it is, what it's about, where it came from, and get a real feel for it in short order. So what I did was I scrounged together about 10 minutes worth of animations, and I put them together in iMovie on the PowerBook, and then I added some nice music in the background just to give it a little bit of an atmosphere. And then I grabbed the microphone and I made comments, audio comments, while watching the movie, and recorded them and attached them to the movie. So now you've got 10 minutes of nice musical animations with me just saying the odd thing every once in a while. There are a lot of nice silence as well, nice moments of silence. I uploaded this just this past weekend, yesterday, to Google Video. And I put a link on it, link to it directly from the homepage of DarwinAtHome, so people can jump in just a few seconds and watch 10 minutes of some really nice introduction video. You can see what comes out of the program. You won't necessarily try the program as a result, or that might be a little too far for a lot of people, but you can get a really quick view of what the program actually produces. And at the same time, hear a bit of a story of what I'm doing here, what the purpose of the project is. And I've found a sort of a way to frame it in terms of artificial life, because that's one thing that's becoming more and more interesting as I'm progressing with this. The discussions with the people from Biota.org, Bruce Damer and Tom Barbalet. Artificial life is a fascinating thing to do, and it's actually close enough to what I'm doing that you could say that what Fluidium is doing, what I'm doing with this DarwinAtHome thing, is creating the bodies of artificial life creatures. As you know, I imagine if you've been listening long enough to this and looking at the software and hearing about how it works, reading about it, you'll know that these creatures of mine are not necessarily competing with each other. They don't necessarily even meet each other. They're not competing in the same world. They're sort of operating in parallel, and they're just judged for success or failure, but they never meet each other, and they never encounter each other. There are also a number of things that are sort of swept out of the system to keep it simple. They don't eat or expend any measured energy either. It's all simplified so that they've got their muscle contractions, and they're judged on the basis of how far they run in a certain amount of time. It's a very tightened down system, so that the evolution goes really quickly. Partly because I want people to experience the some evolution that doesn't take eons and eons to take place. So where I'd like to go is to a situation where the creatures actually meet each other somehow. They actually encounter each other, and they compete for something that either one gets or the other gets. And the way I like to frame this, of course, is in terms of the things that are already there. I don't want to introduce all sorts of new concepts. I'd like to be able to create an artificial life scenario on the basis of the things that are already there. For example, right now the muscle contractions happen all over the place, and there's no measurement of the amount of energy they take or whatever. What could be done, of course, is every time a muscle contracts, it could cost a penny. It could, cost a certain amount of food, a certain amount of energy. So they would be able to move a certain number of steps, and then they'd be basically tired. They'd be out of fuel. That's one interesting thing. So if there's something that they can do, like eating or something, to compensate for the movement that they make, that's something that they would have to do. So they would have to fight to get themselves food in order to keep moving around, in order to keep getting food. So without that motivation, the ones that don't have it in sufficient amounts will die. So that's one thing. You could give them energy and consider the energy to be muscle contractions that they can perform whenever they want. On top of that, of course, when currently they just replicate whenever they're successful. What could also be done is they could be hunting around to collect a certain number of elastic intervals. They're made of elastic intervals connected all together, and it could be part of their survival to actually go and find elastic intervals and sort of gather them up. So you'd have a kind of a herbivore-like creature that was wandering around, watching out for itself, but gathering elastic intervals. And as soon as it had the same number of elastic intervals that it had in its own body, as you can imagine, as soon as it's collected enough, then it can actually replicate itself with a mutation. Right now, that happens, just in the context of the algorithm. So they don't have to gather up and save up in order to replicate. They just replicate. It's part of the definition right now, but it should be something they have to fight for. So if they're hunting around for food, for energy on the one hand, and for replication on the other hand, it becomes a lot more like an artificial life scenario. So now I encourage everybody who's on the podcast to revisit the website and take a peek. One thing, of course, that you'll encounter is the release of the new intelligent design version of DarwinAtHome. Like I said in my presentation from last week, this version is special because it also includes growth mutations. So the actual morphology changes over time, just like the behavior did before. Now it's a combination of behavior and morphology, and that it gets to be really fun because these are two separate things and they're evolving together. So yeah, the Bay Night conference was good. Last year I won the prize for the best demo because they were blown away. They hadn't expected to see something like this. I think their idea was that I would probably change course and do this whole project in a very scientific way and then come back the following year with some sort of academic paper to describe things. But instead what I did is I got back into the software. That's the most fun for me. I added the growth mutations and basically rewrote it to some degree to get that going. And it was a fascinating process, and I'm really happy with the results. And I can't really imagine having stopped last year and started to write about it all and analyze it all and do some sort of scientific experimentation with it. My motivation was to get to the next level in the software itself, and I just don't have the patience to stop and get scientific about it all. I'd rather just push on and create new things, and eventually I imagine I'll get to a point where I can slow down and talk about it all, but I don't feel like I've met that point yet. So you can try out the new Intelligent Design version. It's a lot of fun to watch because you can, if you tweak things a little, if you pay a little attention while things are evolving, you can see some really fascinating things grow really quickly. Actually, when it comes down to it, the demonstration I gave at the B-Night conference almost worked too well. I was sort of blown away. I started off the evolution, and people could see the population view, and they were watching the evolution. And then after a little while of describing things, I stopped and took a view of the current winner in the evolution, and it was surprisingly realistic and sort of mind-blowingly quickly evolved. I was totally taken aback by it. I tried to stay calm and continue discussing, but when I looked at it, I thought, holy, that was fast. So it was actually too fast, to the point that people were thinking this must be fake, which was quite funny. People started asking questions. Was this for real? Because it happened so quickly. What happens is the growth mutations can take place fairly quickly, and if the growth mutation, the thing is, in the algorithm the way it is right now, if the growth mutations are successful and they don't cause any problems, then the next growth mutation will be in a very short time. And so if you happen to get lucky and have a few successful growth mutations, you'd be surprised how quickly things can grow. And the funny thing is, of course, it grows limbs, and it starts to use them. Which brings me to the interesting question that my colleague Thomas asked after the presentation in Belgium. He said, I see symmetry in the creatures. Is this something that you programmed in? Well, yes. The answer is, of course, definitely. I added symmetry. It's completely contrived in a way. But, in nature we see things that are symmetrical. So I decided to enforce symmetry as well. It can be taken away. In fact, if you start out with a seed structure in the new version that is not symmetrical, not tagged as being symmetrical, then the growth will also not be symmetrical. So it's a heuristic, I guess, added on top to create better results more quickly. But it's not necessary. It can be done without. I just want the DarwinAtHome software at the current moment, right now. I'd like to have it impress people. I'd like to have people surprised by how well things work. If you want to do a total scientific analysis of, for example, how successful is locomotion among symmetrical creatures compared to how successful locomotion is among asymmetrical creatures, that would be a wonderful scientific study perhaps, but it's not something that I want to pick up on right now. Okay, well, thanks for listening, and until next time, remember,
evolution is as natural as gravity.
If you are interested in more information on Darwin at Home, or if you'd like to subscribe to the Darwin at Home podcast, DarwinAtHome.org, that's DarwinAtHome.org, and that has more information with regards to Darwin at Home and how to subscribe to the podcast, and also Gerald's blog which explains his developments and gives additional notes to the podcast if you're interested. I thoroughly recommend any artificial life developer or even expert user to consider creating podcasts as a means of talking about artificial life. The kind of long-running project with regards to Biota.org, and certainly with regards to the artificial life developers that I've spoken with to date, is to actively evangelize artificial life to the broader public, to get a sense that there is a community, whilst it's small currently, that it's growing, and that people are talking and thinking and actively debating issues that come up in artificial life development. If you have a podcast or you'd like to be interviewed on Biota.org interviews with regards to artificial life, be you a developer or a user or an academic, please contact me, tom@nobleape.com. Thank you very much for tuning into this podcast. Look forward to you tuning into the next podcast.